Hello, Richard from budgetguitarist.com. So my number one Strat is this guy here. It's got an American neck with jumbo frets. And lately, I've been noticing a buzzing sound around certain areas of the fretboard. Now that sound is being caused by some of the frets wearing down in the spots that I play all the time, like A minor. So when a fret wears down, the string will tend to buzz on the next fret up the neck. So today we're going to learn all about frets and how to make a guitar neck play fantastic. I'm going to do a level crown. Okay, so in order to get rid of the buzz, you want to file or sand down all the frets until they're the exact same height as the lowest fret. And once they're all the same height, then you want to re-crown the top of the frets, because a totally flat fret can cause string buzz. So we want to shape the tops of our frets more like the top half of a circle, or for some people, the top of a school bus, depending on your tastes. I've already done a level and crown on this neck twice. And you might think, uh-oh, it's probably time for a refret. Nope. That is the beauty of jumbo frets, which this guy has. You can do a level crown on them several times because they're already really tall. Okay, so let's talk specifics. All of my guitars are either medium jumbo frets or what's called modern, narrow, and tall frets. So fret height is usually measured in thousandths of an inch. And in terms of Fender frets, medium jumbos are 36 thousandths, jumbos are 55, and the modern, narrow, and tall are also 55 thousandths. So for me, the minimum fret height that I can stand is somewhere around 32 thousandths, but the taller, the better. Under 32 thousandths, I want to do a refret. I don't like small frets. I really prefer like the high 40s to mid 50s. So why does fret height even matter? Well, I mean, it's really up to the player. I find tall frets less effort to bend notes on, less effort to play. I just like them better. But if you're the kind of player who squeezes the neck really hard with jumbo frets, you'll go out of tune. So your mileage may vary. The best way to know what kind of frets you like is to play a whole bunch of guitars and see what feels good. All right, let's get back to my Strat. So one of the nice things about the jumbo frets, again, is they're 55 thousandths of an inch tall. So when it's time to level them off and recrown them, you got a lot of height to work with. As I mentioned, I've already done it twice on this neck. So I'm not actually sure how tall the frets actually are. They still feel like jumbo frets to me, but you know, whenever you level frets, you're going to lose a few thousandths of an inch. And once they're down to like 36 thousandths, they're basically going to be medium jumbo frets. Still very playable. Okay, hang on a second. I want to show you something. One of the smartest purchases I ever made for guitar work was this guy right here. This is the StewMac Luthier's digital caliper. At around $62, they're a lot more expensive than a regular digital caliper, but I've never found a better way to measure fret height, which I'm going to demonstrate in this video. And there's cheaper digital calipers that will also measure fret height, but the build quality on this thing is so much better. And if you're going to buy something and not be satisfied with it, it's better to just spend the extra money. Okay, yes, my whole deal is budget gear, but sometimes the best is worth the money. They say a poor craftsman blames his tools, right? But if you're not mechanically inclined, and I'm not, then getting great tools can really, really help. So even though I normally use like a fret rocker to tell me when my frets are level, I want to get a good sense of where the frets are right now. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take the strings off. I'm going to adjust the truss rod to make the neck as straight as possible. I'll take it off the body. Then I'm going to take a bunch of fret height measurements. And so when I find the lowest fret, then that'll tell me how far down I need to go. If the lowest fret is like, for example, 30 thousandths, I would need a refret. If the lowest fret is 42 thousandths or better, then I'm in really good shape. And so that's what we're going to do. Let's get started. My actual workbench is in the garage, but you don't really want to be in the garage in August in Florida, so I'm going to make do with this little table. Before I work on a guitar, I like to get all my tools ready. I've got Amazon affiliated links to all my tools in the video description if you are interested. The first thing I'm going to do is take off the strings. So what I like to do is use an adapter for my cordless screwdriver. I mean, it just speeds things up. Once I've loosened all the strings, I'll use a string cutter to cut the strings. Now, you always want to loosen the strings before you cut them, because if you don't, they'll fly up and smack you in the face. With the strings removed, I'll take the neck off to make it easier to work with. In this case, there's a small shim that I was using to slightly adjust the neck angle. I'll remember where it was so I can put it back when I'm done. Here's where that expensive StewMac digital caliper comes in handy. I'm going to take some measurements on the neck before I level and crown, just to see where we're at. If these frets are less than 32 thousandths, I'm going to need to do a refret. But I'm very confident they're nowhere near that low. They still feel pretty tall. Okay, at the 3rd fret, I am reading 48 thousandths. That's still pretty tall. Remembering that medium jumbo is 36 thousandths, let's measure a few more frets to see what we're dealing with. At the 5th fret, I'm reading 46 thousandths. I do a lot of playing in that area, so there's definitely a little bit of fret wear. At the 8th fret, it's 48 thousandths again. Higher up the neck at the 12th fret, I'm reading 50 thousandths. So far, the range is from 46 thousandths to 50 thousandths. No wonder I'm getting some fret buzz. So in theory, I'd like to take all the frets down to 46 thousandths to be perfectly flat. The thing is, when you're using sandpaper, it's pretty difficult to get accuracy down to 1/1000th of an inch. So I'm just going to do the best I can and see how close I can get. Now I'm going to mark all the tops of the frets with a blue marker. Once all the frets have been marked, I'll use my StewMac leveling beam with some 320 grit sandpaper attached to it, and I'll sand until there's no marker on the tops of the frets. At that point, they should be pretty close to the same height. But before I do any sanding, I want to adjust the truss rod until the neck is as flat as possible. To measure how flat the neck is, I'm using a notch straight edge. This one is not from StewMac. Actually, I can't remember the name of it, but look in the description. It'll be in there. And I do like these because they're dead flat and they are definitely cheaper than the StewMac version. Because we're dealing with wood here, I probably won't be able to get the neck dead flat to within 1/1000th of an inch, but that's okay. I just want to get it as straight and flat as I can. So now I'm putting some heavy-duty double-sided tape on my StewMac sanding beam, and I'm attaching some 320 grit sandpaper. They do sell strips of sandpaper with an adhesive back, and that would be better, but I'm just working with what I already have in the house. The lower the grit, the faster it'll take off metal, but the more scratched up the metal will be. It's kind of a personal choice as to what grit sandpaper to use. If you look at the pattern on the neck, you'll see where the frets were the highest. It's where the most metal came off. I usually use painter's tape on the fretboard when I do this, but today I decided to skip the painter's tape to see if it's really necessary. I think I probably should have used painter's tape actually, but this won't be the end of the world. I'm reading 45 thousandths at the 5th fret. I'd previously gotten 46 thousandths, but I also don't know if I'm measuring in the exact same spot or not. 1/1000th of an inch is pretty small. Okay, here at the 1st fret, I'm reading 51 thousandths. So it's pretty obvious that I got more sanding to do. I want to get all the frets down to around 45 or 46 thousandths. Now I'm getting 46 thousandths on the 1st fret. Good. Now we're going to mark all the fret tops again, but this time we're going to use a fret crowning file. So in the past, I've used a StewMac 3-corner file, and I've used a metal crowning file. But the StewMac diamond fret crowning file has given me by far the best results. I'm not going to say this is the best fret crowning file because I haven't tried them all. But I will say I'm very happy with the results that I get with this one. The fret crowning file is going to round off the top of each fret, leaving a small landing zone at the very top of each fret. When I'm done, the top of each fret will resemble the top of a circle, but with a very thin flat area. That flat area is called the landing zone, and different people prefer different widths for that. Some people don't want any landing zone. They want a perfect half circle. You mark the top of each fret with a marker, then you use the fret crowning file to file until there's a super thin line of marker at the top of the fret. Okay, with the neck clean, I'm going to use the StewMac fret rocker to check various spots on the neck. The fret rocker has several different edges, and each edge is long enough to cover the span of 3 frets. When you put the fret rocker on 3 frets, it will sit totally flat if they're all the same height. But if the center fret is high or low, the fret rocker will rock like a seesaw. Do kids even have seesaws these days? They probably have them on their phones. You want to try to keep the fret rocker as straight as possible when you do this, so you'll see me positioning my big fat head directly over the neck to make sure I have the fret rocker straight. I didn't find any spots where the fret rocker rocked, which is great. That means my frets are pretty darn level. That's what we want. But all of that filing makes the top of the frets pretty scratched up. So we want to sand away the scratches on the metal, and we want to work our way up the sandpaper grit so that by the end we're polishing the frets. The smoother the fret, the easier it is to bend a string. Again, normally I tape up the fretboard with painter's tape to avoid scratching the wood, but today I'm trying out these metal fretboard protectors by StewMac. If you want to try out some fretboard protectors, I definitely recommend StewMac. I bought some cheaper ones on Amazon and they were terrible. You'll notice I had my sandpaper soaking in water. This is a personal preference. I also like fret erasers. If you're getting into doing this type of work, I'd recommend you try dry sandpaper, wet sandpaper, sanding sticks, fret erasers, and see what works best for you. With all the frets done, I'm just going to clean up the guitar a little bit, and then I'm going to put the neck back on. I want to make sure I put my little shim back in the correct spot. Before I put the strings on, I'm going to oil the fretboard with lemon oil, in this case sold by Duncan. For some reason, there always seems to be a little bit of controversy regarding lemon oil on a fretboard, but I've used it for over 30 years, never had any issues with it myself. And finally, it's time to put the strings back on. This video is already pretty long, so I'm not going to cover setting up action and intonation. I do have other videos on my channel that show you how to do that. Once the guitar is ready to play, the only thing left to do is play it. So here's a video of me just sort of jamming to a backing track I made, and honestly, this is purely just a first take improv. So please forgive any bum notes. I'm just keeping it real here.